Hello, my name is John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from northern British Columbia in the capital of northern British Columbia, Prince George. One of the most beautiful cities in northern British Columbia. British Columbia in particular is one of the nicest places on earth. Northern British Columbia, very, very special. Lots of lakes, lots of nature, and it is a place you must see. Today we have a special guest, Christine Buemann. Welcome to the show, Christine, and tell me a little bit about you.
Oh gosh, I am a mortgage broker. Thank you for having me, for starters. I'm a mortgage broker, a mom. I would say mom first. So I have two little boys at home, 7 and 9. And then I spend the rest of my time in the career that I love. So I own a mortgage brokerage that's based out of northern BC, here in Prince George.
Yeah.
And then I also am a co-owner of the company that owns that company, which is based out of Surrey.
Okay. And so you've been in the Prince George or in northern BC for quite a while? Or?
Yes, and this is a funny story in how I arrived in Prince George. So my dad was out of work, was going through a transitional phase, and moved to Prince George for a job at one of your companies. Which is how I arrived in Prince George.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So which company?
I would want to say Brink Forest Supplies, Brink Forest Products.
Yeah.
I would say. I can't remember. It was 1992.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. And so then you spent some time in Victoria?
Yes, so I was born in Victoria, and we lived all kind of around the Lower Mainland, and then.
Where in Victoria? Is it Victoria proper or Saanich or?
I have no idea.
So
to be honest.
you didn't spend a whole lot of time there then?
No. Not. I want to say maybe 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Not very many. My baby years.
And then from there and then you went down to the coast?
Yep. Moved over to sort of the mainland, Abbotsford, that area, and then up here.
And so when did you come to northern BC then? When your dad came here?
Yep, 1992.
1992. And then, so you had a lot of your training here in northern BC?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, so what did you do? You went to the college? Or
so it was actually, it's through UBC, so it's a sort of do-it-your-own pace experience. So I did it here. It's based out of UBC.
Yeah.
I was actually going through this transitional journey myself of what I wanted to do, and I started to do all my upgrading to go into acupuncture, of all things. And then
acupuncture.
Very different than mortgages.
Yeah, interesting.
And I kind of had a feeling that it wasn't the right thing for me, and I'd always had a passion for real estate, and someone had and I'd always used a mortgage broker myself, which was fairly unique when I started 12 years ago. Yeah. And so one of my friends had said, why don't you consider doing that as a career? And I looked into it, and for me, having a family was always a priority. It was always going to be something that was really important for me. Yeah. And so, interestingly enough, I really started the career as something that I would be able to do around my own schedule as well. And then, of course, as you know, starting to build a business is not always as much free time as you might think it is. But
can be demanding, yeah.
For sure,
yeah. And so then you went into real estate already in when?
So 1992, I was 7, so a little early, but I still was interested in it. And then actually, interestingly enough, reading your book, we have a lot of similar experiences. So I only went to high school till grade 9, and then had a little sort of trying to find my footing in life of where I wanted to go. So I can't remember where I was going off on that tangent, but basically, from there, just was doing upgrading. I just challenged some courses, and then started as a mortgage broker in 2010.
Yeah. So you went to grade 9, and then what happened? So then you kind of stepped away from school?
Yeah.
How did that all happen? Can I ask you about that?
Sure, yeah. It's not something I talk about often, but here we go. I would say I just was always fiercely independent.
Yeah.
And similar to you, I have a neurodivergent brain, and I didn't really find it interesting to sit in class.
ADHD?
Well, not diagnosed, but very similar journey to yours, where I had multiple people say to me, like, have you ever thought that you might have ADHD? And then I actually read a book called Adult Women with ADHD. And then I was like, that's me, for sure.
Yeah.
So I have what they call long haul COVID. So I went to my doctor about it, and we had a conversation around that at that time, because it does impact your memory, and you struggle with some cognitive issues. So he put me on medication for the ADHD, but for me,
what did he give you? Can I ask?
I can't remember the name of it.
Ritalin, Adderall, or God knows what, right?
Yeah, it was like some sort of a generic brand of it.
Yeah. Something that makes you focused or something.
Yeah. And it was very much, I took the first one, I said to my husband, like, this could be dangerous. You feel great. I felt like I was on top of the world. But I really didn't love those side effects, and I didn't love so I only did for a month or two.
I didn't either. Well, you went further in school than I did, because I failed grade 7, as you likely know from the books, 3 times. So people ask me this, and they say, you feel bad about, you were taken out of school at grade 7? I say, I do. I really do, because I should have left earlier. Tongue in cheek a little bit.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
So the way I feel about it is that, as you know, if you have not seen my new book, before you leave here, I'm going to give you a copy of it. It officially comes out on the 26th, as you know, and and I obviously will give you a signed copy of it. So I thought it was so important to write about it, and then the book is different in the sense that it is written with the audience being ADHD or knowledgeable about it or familiar with it or similar issues around what is typical to ADHD, and so it's a different approach, and it also includes other individuals that have given interviews and that are very, very unique. So it's a superpower as far as I'm concerned. I would not be without it, and and more as we and especially in the last 3, 4, 5 years since I've been so public about it, it happens all the time that we encounter individuals that say, well, yeah, that's me. I was diagnosed already quite a while ago, blah, 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 but I've not talked about it all that much. And so the stigma around ADHD, hopefully, is already disappearing and will disappear more, in my opinion.
For sure. And I think that as we sort of evolve as society too, I really struggle with the concept of normal. Of what is normal. Are we neurodivergent, or what is, and my son has some stuff that he's working through with school. So how do you put somebody in that box? And then for me, it's the label of ADHD wasn't as important as the skills to manage it. So for me, it's just been, and I think it impacts everyone a little bit different, right? We might be in like this side of the box, but the tools are different, so. The hyper focus for sure is a skill that has served me very well. And so in that way, I recognize that if I can hyper focus, I can accomplish a lot more in that period of time than most people can. So in order to maximize the benefit of that, I have a lot of things that I manage in my world, like keeping my notifications off of my phone, or even having my phones forwarded and keeping my environment in a really specific way. So I agree that I think the stigma is going. And I think that it's just, I hope as we move through as a society of accepting every person's brain and how we interpret thoughts and ideas and how we navigate life in our own, perspective, our own reality.
Exactly. So when did you really start with, focusing on real estate, in particular mortgage brokering would be something that you were interested in? You were working first for another group for a while, or did?
No, so we'll go back grade 9. I just basically, I know I'd heard you say in an interview in your book that you weren't there, you weren't present in your mind. So for me, I just physically wasn't present. I would just not be there. And I figured out pretty quickly that I could just not show up and I could just challenge the tests, and I would still be able to pass. So that grade 9, kind of grade 10, I wasn't in school for quite a period of time. And then I was able to challenge actually my high school courses and then get my first year of college. So that ended up going pretty well. And I was working as a waitress, which is where I had actually met you before. Just speaking about outside, how I've mentioned that we'd met before. But then... So,
where did we meet?
Earl's.
Earl's. And how did that go again? How long ago was that?
This was a long time ago too. I used to just serve you fairly frequently there, and then we would talk, because back then I brought up that my dad had moved here to work for you.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
What a coincidence.
Yeah? Almost 30 years ago.
Oh my God, right?
Funny.
Yeah.
So so then anyways, I took the course, and basically it's been the only thing I'm really great at, but I have a passion for it, so it worked out well.
Passion, right?
For sure, yeah.
And passion creates hyper-focus.
For sure.
And you're very good at that, to then focus on that, acquire the knowledge that you need to acquire, and then go forward.
Yeah.
Because the other part that I believe is so critically important is finding your passion.
For sure.
And it's one of the books that we are working on to write right now, will come out next year.
Yeah.
About finding your passion.
I probably have at least one person a week say to me in my job, in my day-to-day, you really love what you do, hey? I have a passion for mortgages. It's something that's really weird. But again, I like the math side of real estate. That's why I like mortgages. It's because I'm interested in real estate, but I like that math behind it. So even before I was old enough to get a credit card, I was still printing out amortization schedules and studying them, which is not probably a normal thing that most people do. So I just feel so fortunate to have stumbled into a career that I am so passionate about, and that I can pour myself into, because it feels less like work.
You see, the interesting part about it, Christine, is that you found that that's where your passion is, and I think that's so critically important. As I told you, I'm writing a book about that as we speak. Is that so? How did you stumble into it? Because it just doesn't happen every day that that somebody says, okay, well, I can do this, that, and then I can do mortgage brokering. No, it doesn't work that way, because that is a special niche. So how did you become knowledgeable about that, and to apply the things that you're so good at, fitted perfect for that particular situation?
I think a part of it is honestly luck, but I think a few things, to be honest. I think you have to be passionate, but I think a part of passion is also choosing how you show up in your world and in your life. And I think that how we experience our environment and our situation will always be what it is. And this is something I always tell my kids: if I teach you anything in this world, it's that you get to choose how you experience life. So would I be equally as passionate about being a travel agent if that's what I had started my journey on? I don't know. I think I'm the kind of person that finds passion and that finds joy and that finds contentment in what I'm doing, or tries to anyways. So real estate is something that if I'm trying to verbally process it, I would say there's an element of safety with it that I was probably looking for.
That's already was part of you before.
Yeah.
Because you, at 19, you already owned a house, right?
Correct, yeah.
Which is not normal.
Right.
Really.
Yeah.
So 19, that's the time you go partying and doing whatever, right? So but not thinking in terms of, laying the foundation for what happens next.
In all fairness, by the time I was 19, I had already had more life experience than most other people who are in their 30s. Yeah. So I just took what most people do from like 20 to 29, and I condensed it in a really dramatic fashion into, say, age 14 to 19. So I kind of got it out of the way.
So then I'm assuming what happened is you had this unique interest in real estate, period. And then from there and then, the more you look at it, the more you started, getting knowledge around real estate that can be quite complex for people that are not used to it in terms of what to buy, how to finance, what does it all mean, what our bank is looking for, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff.
Yes, and I think that also for me, I always was going to be self-employed. That was never an option for me to not be self-employed.
Yeah.
I always knew I wanted to build and grow a company. So it gave me an opportunity to do that as well.
Yeah.
And then I always liked the math side of it. It was something that there weren't very many actual mortgage brokers in Prince George back then as well.
Right.
And I don't know that I started it as my forever plan. I just really kind of kept growing and growing as I went down it and finding more fulfillment. And I think I like being good at it, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
So, and be interesting for those that are watching us. It's quite interesting how to approach, saying, I'm interested in buying a house, hypothetically speaking. It's probably one of the largest investments people make.
For sure.
How do I go about doing that, and what what are the banks or whatever institutions they are using, what are they looking for, and how do I go about doing it? Do I walk into a bank and say I want to buy a house, or it's not quite as simple as this, but knowing again how it works, is very important, and that's where a good broker will come into the picture, who then will kind of do an analysis of the purchaser and looking at the house or whatever it is, and looking at the financial possibilities, and it can make a huge difference in terms of being successful or not successful, or get a better deal, or all those things are very, very important, because the broker's role is to work for their client, who is the one that is the buyer of the house, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really important to take a holistic view of the entire financial situation.
Right.
I always say there's no right or wrong. There's just a right for you.
Of the party buying or of the market?
Both.
Both.
To be honest, and how they tie in together. I think that oftentimes we're taught, big bank has this specific product, and that's what feels safest to us. And I think, I know for me, we have some really amazing brokers in Prince George as well. We're very blessed. For me, I'm a nurturer by nature. So I like being able to take care of people throughout the process. I like being able to use my knowledge and experience to say, that might actually not be the best idea. Or, hey, have you thought about this? I'm all about giving people as much education as they can so they can make their own educated decisions.
Which is critical, right?
So important, so important. But I also think it's important to think bigger than just that one product that your bank might have a vested interest in selling you.
Right.
And just having someone work independent. I'm huge in all things financial, of having someone work for you rather than for one specific financial institution.
Yeah. So and obviously, because of the reputation that you have developed, which is very, very good, is that you have a lot of credibility from lenders that you approach, because you know what they will want to need, and you know where the soft spots are, the negotiating points are, where you can do a better deal with your client for an A rather than B. So that's the benefit of having a broker, a good broker in particular, working for you.
It's all, honestly, that's probably one of the biggest lessons for me in business, is that it's all about relationships.
Yeah.
And for me, I will say I have been able to get some, mortgages across the finish line that others haven't been able to. And the number one reason I'm able to do it is because I lead with honesty. And I do the work. I do the work before the work. So I know exactly what questions the lender's going to ask me, and I get ahead of all of them with an explanation. So I think that makes it important. And also over the years, you develop these relationships with lenders, and they know that if I say, I've done the legwork. I know that this is the case. We've paid for all of our own searches. We're not leaving that onto the lender. By the time we approach the lender with a approval request, we've already done all the due diligence, which is opposite to how it usually goes.
And which is credible, right? So that's the other part about it, right?
Yeah.
And so if you do that, are you limited? It's not just the Prince George market, I presume. So where is your territory?
So I would say I serve more of northern BC. I've considered expanding to the lower mainland. I own a brokerage or co-own a brokerage now that's based out of Surrey, so I have to be mindful of not encroaching on people who work, in the same company's area. We do quite a bit on the island. We do Kelowna. I feel most comfortable here right now. As my family's here, I have young kids here, and I know the area really, really well. So if somebody says to me, we just wrote an offer on a 1970s home in Lower College Heights, my first thing is check for Preserve Wood Foundation. And so someone from out of town won't know that, where I do. Or they're buying out in Pineview, perfect, check for a lagoon. So I've acquired so much knowledge that's specific that I think allows me to have an advantage over out-of-town brokers, that I also am mindful that I'm the out-of-towner if we're going into other communities too.
So you're doing a lot of stuff, and there is no particular, it starts at 9 o'clock and at 4:30 it's done. It's not that kind of a job, right?
Definitely not.
And so Grant, your husband, is he accepts that, obviously.
Yeah.
What does he do then?
He's in logging.
He's what?
He's in logging.
Okay.
So he's a foreman for a large logging company.
Yeah.
So.
And so you've known him for quite a while. I think he was 9 and you was 7.
That's when we first met. It was very, I don't know that he remembers it as much as I do. But.
No, it was kind of funny when I read about it and saying that, you went to the same school or same area, obviously. And and you knew each other then in a way, so and obviously you've been, together for 12 years or 11 years?
14 years altogether now.
14 years,
yeah.
So then coming back to the mortgage, because it's somewhat fascinating right now.
Yeah.
The other thing that you do and your specialty is saying, okay, Christine, where are interest rates going to go? In more particular, mortgage rates, because and I'm just putting this to you like I'm a client. I have my ideas about it, and so do you. But but as a client, saying that what I'm afraid of is that I buy a house and there, and all of a sudden there's all kinds of pressure on inflation and prices are going up, gas are going up, blah blah blah, all that other kind of stuff. Will rates go again to 21% like it was in the early 80s?
I don't believe so, personally.
No,
I don't think. I think there are enough measures in place that, without diving too far into it, I think we're at a period right now where if rates go up too fast and too much more aggressively, we are at a real risk of heading into a recession, at which point the pendulum will shift back. And I think rates, as with all things in life, are a pendulum shift. And so they adjust and then they normalize. I think it's also important for us to remember that we are coming out of a pandemic. So I heard another mortgage broker give a good analogy of we're in the hangover. We're in the hangover of the pandemic. So it's going to be uncomfortable for a little bit. And I think if we're honest with ourselves about that, we may have 18 to 24 months of higher cost of everything. Yeah. And the quicker we can get ahead of that, then I think it'll start to normalize or start to adjust.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I believe so that if there is going to be a bit of a recession, then it is going to be a short one.
Right.
Probably less than 24 months and maybe less. Obviously other factors that play a role is the Ukraine and COVID, and one of the interesting things in the economy in general is that getting employees extremely difficult, not only for us as a company, although for us it's difficult too. A lot of no-shows. People don't go to work, and the same is happening I fly a lot and go a lot to through the airlines. Somewhere where the flight has been canceled because there are no people.
For sure.
Or security, where there should be 3 lines, there's only 1 line working, and a lot of people are, so it is right across the country. And the same with Canadian National, the railroad, in terms of getting product to market. For us, we load lumber on carloads with center beams, and and I've been in the industry here for nearly 60 years. I have never ever seen any time a period we can't get any cars.
Yep.
And that is not for 1 week, 1 month. It's already for 6 months. And so even to the extent that we have to start curtailing because we cannot get wheels underneath the product to bring it to market. And the market for us is mainly in the southern United States.
Right.
And even talking to the highest levels in CN, and I'm also the vice chair of the Council of Forest Industry, so we communicate right with the senior levels in CN. They really don't have the answer other than the turnaround time of these cars.
Right.
It's huge, and it may well be for another 4, 5, 6 months.
So, question for you. Obviously, we have lofty immigration goals here in Canada, and I think that will help address some of this shortage of workers. But it's just such a vast contrast to where we were pre-pandemic. So, I guess twofold on a bigger scale is, what do you think is the primary driver for the shortage of employees right now? And then, do you have any ideas of a potential solution?
Yeah, interesting. What is the driver is that I think it is all post-COVID for one, and that people were, something that used to be a routine was no longer routine anymore, because the workplace was, to different extents, not continuing like normal.
Right.
And then other people, have spent a lot of time at home and are reconsidering their jobs and their careers as to what they are doing. And the other part is that the educational system that we have, where we are not providing enough skill sets for some of the jobs that we have, and increasingly more for the jobs that we need to create, and even for the hospitals and the docks and all of that across the board. I think to a certain extent we have to kind of review all of that. In terms of how we go about it. The other part likely is opportunity to bring in new workers from places all over the world, but in particular now Central Europe, the Ukraine and places like that.
Yeah.
So, but it's a real serious problem. But I think all the combined things that have happened over the last 2 to 3 years, cumulative, have all an effect on it until things get back to a sense of normal. Yeah. Even the container ships. I used to say, the container ships coming in from Asia, that people, if you would stand and say Prince Rupert, you would say, there's a boat coming in here in the next 20 minutes. You stand there and say, and there it is, So all of that doesn't happen anymore, because then the container comes in, now it has to be unloaded. That doesn't work the way it did before. Right. The rail is no longer available like it used to be before. So everything is upside down and is trying to reinvent itself to a certain extent. Right.
And I completely agree with you. I think it's a really interesting area, because I think in how it ties into my world, I'm always thinking about how does this relate to mortgages, is that the government is using this specific tool of the target overnight rate to try and combat inflation.
Yeah.
However, it's so clear that it's not the right tool for the job, or most likely not. Certainly not the only tool, and a lot of it is these employment issues, or like you said, the cost of fuel because of the war, and there's so many other contributing factors that for me it's interesting to see it play out where I understand they don't have very many other tools to use, but it's just so obvious that that's not the main problem.
And we saw that in the early 80s, right, where it was disastrous. That particular approach, that was the simple approach, increase the rates, and then from there and then demand goes down and all the other things, and everything will be fine. No, that's not the way it works. So I see still some more pressure maybe on it to a certain extent, but that's not where the solution lies. But at some point in the next year to year and a half, hopefully things will get back to a sense of normal, and people will fall back into the routines they had before. But it's the same all over the world, not only here, same in Europe and in Asia.
I was in Scotland, as I mentioned recently, and it was exact same problems over there.
And I hear the same of Europe. Yeah, I kind of read about you. You spent time in Scotland, so I was going to ask, what's your connection to Scotland? Now I heard that is your dad from there?
So I do have family ties there. So my mom's family, last name is Moffat, is from a community called Moffat there. And then my dad's grandma was from Scotland, and grandpa was from England. So fought in World War I when they were from Wales. And to be honest, I'm sure it must have been in my unconscious mind, but it's a really silly story. I just happened to see photos on Instagram of this beautiful country, and I thought, oh, it'd be really beautiful to go there. And so for me, I'm really mindful of social media, of what I allow into my world and into my feed. So I like, if there's something like that, I like clicking on it so that it'll just give me more of the nice things. So I was kind of flooding with these beautiful photos, and talking to a friend of mine, and he was sharing with me, and I said, mentioned Scotland, somehow it got into my orbit, and he mentioned that his wife used to live there, and they'd spent a month there. And as I was on the phone with him, I got an email that said 3-day sail to Scotland. And I thought, what are the chances of that? First of all, our phones are always listening to us, obviously. And so I took a screenshot of it, and I sent it to my girlfriend, who I'd mentioned it to as well. And I happened to be going through some health issues myself, and I thought, maybe I'll go there for my 40th birthday, but I was 36, so a bit of a gap there. And anyways, long story short, I had looked at flights, and they were a couple $1,000 each way, and I just happened to look at this sale, and I had some business flights that had been canceled, and I had WestJet dollars, and I had 32 cents difference available. So I was like, if that's not a sign, then I don't know what is. I guess I have to go. So I kind of went, I just booked it and said, babe, do you want to go to Scotland? Nope. Okay. Do you mind if I go? Nope. So I was there.
So WestJet?
Yeah.
So you flew into, I don't think they fly into Heathrow, but they fly into
Edinburgh. So Prince George to Vancouver, Vancouver to Toronto,
oh
Toronto
my God,
to Edinburgh.
a long way, huh?
Yeah. So it was, of course, delay after delay, given the current environment. So it took me 2 days to get there, 2 days to get home.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful.
So how long were you there?
So 10 days in total, and then 6 days really of enjoying it there. But I did an interesting thing because, as you know, being self-employed, I love my work, but I'm plugged in all the time. So it's really hard to make space for myself and give myself permission to just be. And I also find that, again, I'm a nurturer by nature. So if anyone else is with me, then I naturally just gravitate to, sure, whatever you want to do. I'm pretty easygoing. So I bought a UK phone when I arrived, and I obviously, my whole family and my business, my employees and everyone knew the plan. I just gave it to anyone who needed to reach me in emergency, and then I turned on my out of office for all my email, my regular phone, everything, and then I just went completely unplugged, which was great. No music, which was a weird thing that I didn't realize I do. No maps. So I was walking around Scotland with absolutely no idea where I was. Got super lost and super found.
Did you have a car?
Nope.
So how did you kind of use the public transportation?
Yeah, I walked a lot. And then I ended up going on quite a few tours. So they were usually 10 to 12 hours. And then I would just hop on, and they take you all around, which was great. And then most everything else just kind of explored by foot.
How was the weather?
Very rainy.
Yeah.
I think to be expected,
Yeah.
but it was gorgeous.
Yeah. So you had a good time, huh?
I had a good time. Yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously you came back and then kind of picked up again your business side.
Yeah. And the nice part about the flight home, it was 2 days, and so I could get caught up on all the work that I needed to. I gave myself permission to just work at the airport and stuff like that. So I came home and everything was so much better than I think we allow ourselves, especially in moms or as leaders of companies. You think I'm so important. If I'm not here, the world is going to end, and we put this pressure on ourselves.
Yeah.
And so it sounds silly to realize how unimportant you are,
right?
But it also takes a big weight off of your shoulders. So
So just want to talk a little bit more about your business. So you are the co-founder of the Collective Mortgage Group.
That's right. Yeah.
But what is that?
So basically, a couple years ago, a couple colleagues and I were working for a very large company, the largest Dominion lending franchise in all of Canada. And we had 107 brokers, and I really liked the leadership side of it, so I was able to have my business up here and also sort of fill that need of leadership. And then we just sort of realized that it wasn't our jam. And it was hard leading a company where you're not really the leader, you're the messenger, and your job is to keep everybody happy on someone else's terms. So we decided to step down. So there were 4 of us as directors, one of them being the owner, and the 3 of us stepped down and created our own little company where we said it's only going to be for experienced brokers. It's only going to be for people who do higher volume, because it comes, and not to try and, to belittle others who don't.
No, but that was the model, right?
Yeah, it's the model, and for us it was just a matter of minimum 10 years experience, minimum they call volume, so minimum 15 million in volume, and just the level of experience and the conversation that you have in that type of a group. It was always meant to be a boutique brokerage. It was always meant to be a low-cost place for us all just to sort of collaborate together. And then, well, actually we started with just the 3 of us and said, hey, listen, if no one else joins, then it is what it is. And then a few people ended up joining us from the company who we left, which was great for us and very validating for our belief. So when I started it, I said, I think you can just have a transparent, really open, honest mortgage company. In mortgage land, there's a lot of old school, not appropriate behavior. So when you're talking about exposing things and so when we started this company, we definitely had a lot of threats of lawsuits, a lot of vicious behavior that I just kind of wanted to say, like, where's your mom? This behavior is just not okay. So that made it an interesting transition, but it also really allowed me to see the type of leader that I never want to be, and the type of leadership that I never want to support more than anything. Sure, you might have a great company, but I will never, ever support a company that's led by this value, or whatever it ends up being.
Exactly. So that company now, how many brokers are there?
So we have 10 primary brokers, and then most of us have little teams. So here in Prince George, I have me, and then I have 3 people that work with me, or for me, but mostly with me.
So they're working for you as part of the collective.
So mine would be a technically called premium mortgage, kind of go by Christine Buemann mortgage team and locally, because people recognize the name. So there would be 4 of us here. But I'm the only primary broker. So in the context, we have 10 primary brokers, and most everyone has their own little pods, their own little teams. And then the leaders kind of come together. We really wanted it to be a group of leaders who have a vested interest in showing up as the best version of themselves for themselves and for each other.
In BC only?
Yeah.
In all of BC, or is that's where the focus is, right? And how do you call it, premium brokers? So if I say now I want to get a hold of Christine, so what do I look up?
Most people just look up my name. So the name Premium Mortgage carried forward with me from another brokerage that I used to hang my hat. And it's actually a silly way that I came up with the name, or that I acquired it, I suppose.
Was available?
It was, it was the previous name, and it was our email address. And the email address had been changed a few times. And what I was learning is that a lot of people would just go back to their old emails and then just find that email. So here, our company was sold, and there was, again, some behavior that I don't support or encourage. And I had reached out to the previous owner and said, if you ever sell the domain, the web domain, I just want to keep my email address because I'm tired of it constantly changing when I'm forced to use somebody else's name and it's my business. And so lo and behold, they came to me and said, I'll sell it to you for a couple grand. I said, okay.
God, take it.
Take it, that's all.
Yeah.
So it's mine now. And then the name ended up saying, kind of sticking the same.
Perfect, right?
Premium mortgage, and I liked it.
Yeah, yeah. So so that's the name, and then so the company then works. The collective mortgage group works as a total entity or individually, but as a group.
Yeah, I would say individually, but as a group. So we pool our volume together. So I host weekly meetings where we have different lenders who come on. There are educational segments, and not just lenders. We have mental health specialists. We have appraisers. We have some coaches and business coaches on how to manage time, things like that. So we really just try and be together in that way. I technically own the company, so we do their payroll, everything kind of funnels through us. But they're essentially commission brokers who work underneath our company. So some of them take our name, and some of them choose to brand themselves in the same way as well. And
do you have a head office or?
Technically, which is based out of Surrey.
Yeah, yeah.
It's my co-founders. It was his house for a long time.
So how many brokers are in that entity?
So I think altogether we were at 24. I want to say we're probably 25 of brokers and employees because some people are not licensed.
It's quite sizable, huh?
Yeah.
Considering.
Yeah, considering we only started in 2020.
Wow.
So we did, 2021 was a challenging year. I developed long COVID, so my ability to be as present and as available as I would have liked to be wasn't as much. And then obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic. I think that 2021 in real estate world was like the tap was turned on and a lot of people probably got accustomed to that. So we really just tried to make sure that people were staying grounded, maintaining the foundation, recognizing like this is an anomaly. All of this volume that you're getting here, this world that we're in is just a blessing for the year. Take it for what it is, but don't lose your footing,
Yeah. Interesting. So the 22 a little bit better then, kind of.
22 has slowed down for a lot in the bigger centers. So that's the interesting part about owning the brokerage is that we've got quite a few on the island as well as in the Lower Mainland, and then it's just me up here, and then we have a nice, lovely lady in Williams Lake. So you kind of have an eye on what's going on in all the markets, and Vancouver has taken a very sharp downturn. Kelowna as well, the island as well, more logical decisions being made, which I really support. And more interactions that are beneficial to both parties, which I also really support. In Prince George, we're actually not seeing a huge downturn. We may, of course, but what I've been saying is previously, even 6 months ago, you had 10 buyers for every home. You're going competing offers, you're going over list price, and people were making very emotionally charged decisions, which is never a good idea in my world, I believe. So, we were seeing a house listed for 400 that would go for 450. Or and you'd see buyers who would write 10 different offers, and every time they want to write an offer, we're helping them review the property. And so just from like the mortgage broker standpoint, there was a lot of extra work, and same with realtors that would go in because you're getting them prepared, you're ready to go, and then they don't win. Okay, so then they try again, and they get there, they find this dream home, and then they don't win. Okay, and you do that repeatedly, and it becomes pretty disheartening. So even with these higher rates, people are feeling discouraged, and I think it's amazing because so many people actually have an opportunity to buy now, where yes, their payment is going to be a little bit higher. We're heading into an environment where their cost of living would already be higher. Their rent or whatever their other mortgage would be would already likely be higher. So sort of in that context, it's not as big of a, and also our mortgage amounts are very much smaller here than the bigger centers. You're looking at least a $900,000 mortgage in the Lower Mainland. Where here you're probably 3 to 4. So you're not feeling the impact as much, higher wages to offset that as well. And then just the fact that you can actually buy a house because the pool may be smaller, So the opportunities are still there really in northern BC, right? Yeah, for sure.
And in George in particular.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also we may not see houses flying off the market in 2 days, but 3 months is actually relatively normal for a house to sit on a market.
Yeah.
And I think we'll start to shift back into this balanced state. And again, I think that it may slow down, just like when the pandemic first hit. And it always feels so big in the moment. And I always just try and remind our team and myself even that it's never as big as it feels in the moment.
Yeah.
So this too shall pass. We'll get back to whatever comes next. But
Yeah.
all we can control is what we have today.
So what are mortgage rates right now for the average individual if they want to
So-
buy a house?
They're changing every day
Yeah.
and quite a bit. So I would say as of today, mid fives for if you have 20% or more
Still
down.
not bad though.
Right, context. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so even people who have variable rate mortgages, there's just this deflation that's coming from a lot of people who purchased in the last few years, but they also had 1.5%, right? Or even 2% mortgages. So if 2% has now gone up to 4%, it still feels big because again, you're in the moment.
Yeah.
It's your payment.
Yeah.
And we're hearing all these things in the news of everyone's going to lose their houses. So somebody, for example, whose mortgage rate may have been 2% a few months ago is now at 4%.
Yeah.
They also were stress tested. So the
Yeah.
government has a stress test in place that would have made sure that their income to debt ratio qualifies under today's guidelines at 5.25.
Yeah.
So it's not as though they were only stretching it for that 2%, and yeah, 2% increase is a lot.
So
But
tell us a little bit about stress testing. It is making sure that the lender doesn't overreach, right?
exactly. So there's two different ratios that the lenders of the default insurers are going to use. First one's called gross debt servicing. That's your income towards all of the property expenses. Property tax, mortgage payment, heat. What a lot of people don't realize is that some of these can actually vary. So property tax amount that they'll use, heat amount will start to be different per lender as well. And then the second one is total debt ratio. So your income compared to all of your expenses combined. This is going to be lines of credit, vehicle payments, which is any ATV payments, which is big up here, as well as all the property expenses.
Yeah.
So the mortgage payment that's used in option one here, where no more than 39% of your income can be used towards that, is they basically take your mortgage balance and they assume that the rate is whatever the stress test rate is at. So leading into, again, this is changing day by day as well because unfortunately fixed rates have gone up considerably higher, which make it easier for people to qualify for variables for these last couple weeks. But essentially, it's been 5.25. If you're getting a 5-year fixed rate today at say 5.5, they're stress testing your mortgage at 7.45.
Yeah.
Did I say 4.5? They're either way 2% higher.
Yeah, 2% higher.
Yeah. Yeah. So it does, and it's funny to look back. I do a lot of lobbying in the government, and a couple years ago, everyone was saying, "Oh, this is just such a high stress test rate. It's so unreasonable. It's so unreasonable." And now our 5-year fixed are actually higher than what the stress test was. So
Yeah. So, yeah, and but still not all that bad, really. So and the market is still somewhat undersupplied, right?
for sure, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Want to talk about a little bit more about other things that you do. You love to read.
I do, yeah.
Anything or but.
I do. I like to physically read books that are interesting. I don't know. I like ones that have a good storyline. I really like words. I find that I think words are really subjective. We hear them through our own lens, or read them through our own lens. And so I like well thought out words that have good imagery. And so I think, but of course, the person who writes it has to have the same sort of, I guess, brain that I do. So I do like good stories for that. And then I listen to a lot of audiobooks for motivational things, just sort of how to live your best life, I guess.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then the same with audiobooks. So much has changed now, right? During the COVID period, because I'm a writer and an author, our book that we printed, I'm going to give you a copy of.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So it's quite a process to do a book, not only in terms of the writing part of it, which usually takes about 2 years, at least in my case. The first one, I said it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it.
Sure, yeah.
And then we become a little bit better at it, and but all the things that are involved, what should the outside jacket look like? How should this one look? What kind of paper do you use? What is the font size? Will there be pictures in it?
Yeah.
All of that, right? And then having it, properly edited and doing all the other work on it, and then getting it what they call print ready is because we have to produce the product in such a way that once we deliver it to the printer, then it has to be ready to print. And put it in the machine and it spits out the books. And if you need at least a year lead time.
Right.
If you miss it by a week, it takes another year. And it's so demanding right now. Because there is so much writing being done in the COVID period. So,
it's an interesting thing I read the other day. I don't watch TV, so I stopped watching TV in 2017, but I do like the audiobooks. I also have a high words per minute, so I like listening to them at 1.7. That's my preferred speed, and it just keeps me engaged. I don't know, it's my thing. But
explain that. What did you say there?
Okay, I will, but I want to tell you this quickly first about books before, otherwise I'll forget. And it was saying that the difference with movies and reading is that you can have, when you're reading, it allows you the permission to absorb it at your own pace. But listening and watching, they control the speed, so you can have to keep up. But if there's a concept, or you can't just pause and process it, where reading, and I don't know why I'd never really thought of that before, but reading, as you navigate the book, you can just take a moment and allow your brain to absorb that specific thing as you go along. So I think that's why it's that vivid imagery.
Right.
And then back to the 1.7. I don't know. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I find that I have a hard time. Either, I don't know if you can relate to this, but I either hyperfixate on it or I just don't. I'm like scattered all over the place.
You see, that's interesting that you say that, because it was about a week ago. This meant nothing to me because I had never heard about it. But correct me if I'm wrong. If you say 1.7, 1 would be normal.
Yes.
1.7 means speeding it up to the words flying by you at 1.7 times normal.
Correct.
And so somebody, I think it was my 20-year-old grandson of my brother out of Holland that was here, is studying on university, smart, like he's studying business, and very bright. Anyway, so, and he was going to let me listen to something, and that he did, and he said, I got it right here. So he put it on, and then he sped it up, and I said, what are you doing? And can you believe it?
Yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah.
I had never done that.
Yeah. I don't know how I stumbled into it either, but it holds my attention longer, and I find it easier to listen to.
For me too.
Interesting.
So, and I have not practiced it much. I only found out about a week ago.
Yeah.
But, and that's what it is. Very, very interesting.
That is really interesting.
All of that sort of thing is changing, really, isn't it?
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And the fact that there is an option, right?
Yeah.
That we can explore that and say, okay, well, this is actually going to be more interesting for me. I don't know about for you, but for me, I find that because I had limited experience in school setting, I love learning. I'm so fascinated with things that I can learn. So even going to Scotland, all I wanted to do was learn the history because it's all so new to me.
Yeah.
And here I am at 37, and I didn't know of all of these amazing stories. But I think there's a bit of a blessing there because I'm experiencing this learning as an adult, as a capable and more resourced version of myself. So I can appreciate it so much more. And so, even the books, I love studying the brain. Growing up, one of my best friend's dad was a neurolinguistic programmer. Have you heard of that before?
No.
So they are essentially like a hypnotist, but it just talks about the language that we use and how each person's brain processes it, and how you can essentially use specific language, maybe a more neutral word, to persuade or to encourage someone to do something, or to understand how their brain is functioning or what they're thinking at the time. So yeah, I find there's like neuroplasticity, meaning that we can actually change, rewire our brain, which is an interesting concept too, like studying that kind of stuff.
Interesting, eh? Yeah. It's all in a way of changing the in a way you will find part of that in this book. The approach to writing it has been, as I said earlier, is different, and it allows somebody to go to here and start reading, as we sometimes do, that have attention issues, and then go further and read that part, and then go someplace else, and then come back to the other ones.
Was the process of writing the book that same way? Like, I'm sure you're the same as me, or I would assume that sometimes when I have ideas, I have to just map them all out so that I can find which way they're going to go, because sometimes they're really scattered. So was that
somewhat
similar?
very similar to that? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and especially in this book, because that I wanted to make sure ADHD unlocked that how do I accomplish holding the attention, and and then bringing in different experiences from different individuals, and so I think we're dealing with about 12 different individuals. A good example would be the foreword is written by Dr. Tracy Lotz, and she's probably one of the most popular doctors in Prince George, and a medical doctor, also an emergency doctor, but ADHD.
Interesting.
Yeah, and she wrote a foreword for it. You can see it here.
Yeah. So question for you, as a mom who, my world is my kids, and my youngest son, obviously don't want to share too much of his stuff, but we're going through some challenges with him. Don't know if it's specifically ADHD, but some dyslexia and some learning differently. So if someone could have given your mom advice when you were young, what do you think it would have been?
First, recognizing that it was attention, and although the ADHD was not known then, but clearly that's what it was. That it was not a question of having issues in terms of discipline and all the other things. It was just being hyperactivity and attention. Having difficulty in terms of attention, and it requires a special approach to it, and I believe now more and more that is being recognized. Even this morning, I was in my office, probably now before we met you this afternoon, and one of the fellows that works for us, Reinhardt, and he's an operations guy. He brought his mom over, his mother-in-law over from South Africa, and he's from South Africa, and his wife. They wanted me to meet her before she went back. So we just got together in the boardroom, and she has already wrote my other book, Against All Odds. But she would like to get a copy of this one, and I signed one for her, and I gave her a copy. She's a teacher, teaches challenging young people, in particular as it relates to ADHD. Wow. Yeah.
What are the chances?
What are the chances? But this, Christine, is happening over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Is that doesn't happen, once in a while. It happens virtually daily. I was in Costco, I believe on Friday. I was approached by two individuals. One said to me, "When is the book coming out?" I said, well, officially on the 26th.
Yeah.
And then she said to me, "I have an 80-year-old son. He has ADHD. I want to see your book."
Yeah.
And the frequency of occurrence much higher than most people assumed. And it's not only as it relates to ADHD. It could be attention issues for other reasons. Trauma is one of them.
Right.
PTSD is another one, and mainly referred to in this context of ADHD. So
what I think is really interesting for me too is sort of going through this discovery process myself is how differently it shows up often in women.
Yeah.
And so it's often misdiagnosed or just missed in general in women because it does show differently.
Yeah.
So I'm curious as you go through this journey as well to hear.
What I found is the frequency of occurrence, they say in men much higher than women. I don't believe so.
No.
It is different.
Yeah.
And that's what we found, and that it is much higher. But the biggest thing to get out of here, and then, hopefully in combination with my book that I did, Against All Odds, it's not about hurrah, hurrah, how successful is John. That's not what it is about. Mm-hmm. That's not why I wrote it. I wrote it for the reason simply saying that, to understand it and to recognize it as something that is not bad. Mm-hmm. It is simply different, and that a lot of those that are affected by it can turn it into really a superpower. And if you combine it then with finding, as you said earlier, is your passion, mm-hmm. and that's a critical piece too. You find the passion, and then the hyper focus. They can become extremely difficult or extremely successful in the things they do.
For sure.
This book describes that. And what I say about this book is that I believe that, that virtually there is no one that is not, gets not affected by it, either direct or indirect, either in the family or in your friends or in the workplace. Mm-hmm. That's how frequent the occurrence is. And to understand it, I think, is very, very critically important. But for me, I felt like as a young boy a lot of times that I had been a failure. Mm-hmm. And it took me a long time well into in my case, until I was well into my 60s, until I was diagnosed. Mm-hmm. And but it even affected me through my 40s, 50s, in terms of having confidence, So,
I think it's brilliant that you're giving people permission to be honest with themselves as well. I think especially in your generation, because there's this stigma. And my experience, and maybe it's naive, but I feel like for me, I often can't recognize or be honest with maybe myself until I'm on the other side of it. Like, oh, that was a silly thing to do, or that was a mistake, until you've kind of become your more resource self. But I think the challenge is when it's with your brain, you're still managing it. So you're still trying to navigate it. And then when you can acknowledge it and give it a name or give it a reason, not an explanation, but a reason, it gives yourself permission to be honest with yourself.
Exactly.
About it,
And it's not a liability. In a lot of cases, it's an asset. I could not have done what I do if it were not for ADHD. There's no question about that. And it is so important that, if at least a portion of the population we can maybe help with this book and telling the story, or at least stimulating that, that's what I intend to do. But I really enjoyed spending time with you, and especially hearing your story, and it being similar in a lot of ways to mine. Yeah. And I want to give you a copy of my book. Oh,
thank you. I'm so looking forward to it.
I have to find I have a pen here.
Like I said, it's so meaningful for me too, especially having a son who we're trying to support in every possible way, So I think it's brilliant work. So funny thing as you're doing that is ADHD, I have a very weird memory for things. So I remember the table that you used to sit in Earl's and what you used to eat.
Oh my God.
Isn't that weird? I remember very weird things, or people's birthdays. I'll remember someone's random kid's birthday sometimes I acknowledge that it's a little bit creepy that I remember things that they've told me. It's like, so
actually, I must tell you too that most people, even the ones in this room, will say, I have an amazing memory.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
You know, I can remember things that people say, how does he possibly remember that?
Yeah.
And the same with numbers. You know, I'm very good with numbers, and I've always been very good.
I can still remember people's mortgage rates, but you'll understand this maybe. But I'm also the person that went to Home Depot and loaded my entire cart and then left after paying and forgot to bring the whole cart with me because I was so up in my head that I was like, I got home. Oh my gosh, where's all my stuff? I forgot it at the store. But yet I can remember your mortgage rate from 10 years ago.
Isn't that amazing? Christina, thanks for having you. I'll give you a hug once we stand up. Is that,
Perfect.
Thank you for the interview.